transfixed on the colors. And some of the colors they liken. Brianna, go to slide 23. I didn't put it on this slide. Just for a second, go to slide 23. It should have, yeah, see the stones are here? All of the stones, I don't want to take time here, but all of these 12 stones were in the breastplate of the high priest of Israel. It's called the ephod, okay? The ephod. And in the ephod were precious stones, each of which represented one of the tribes of Israel. So there are all kinds of theologians who say, okay, now this red one stood for these guys, and the green one stood for these guys. And is Jasper on there? Carbuncle, that's a good name. Jasper, yep, down here, you can't see it. That's the Benjamin stone, okay? They may be right. They may be right. That maybe there may be a tie-in, and it certainly would be a very interesting study, wouldn't it be? But remember, look! Don't miss this. What John is saying is, I have never seen anything so compellingly glorious in my life. You have to see this. Yeah, maybe you want to figure out what the stones mean, but before you do that, make sure you look here. Make sure you get a look at this. You have to see this glorious God. And there's a good chance that after you look at him, you probably won't care what tribe of Israel the stone represents, because the beauty will just consume you. That's what John was saying. The important point here, back to slide 14 if you would, Brianna. The important point here is that whatever the colors, jasper and diamond and carnelian and emerald might mean, and I'm not saying they don't mean something, I'm saying they're not the main point. John is telling us that Jesus is beautiful beyond description, breathtakingly awesome. Don't miss him. The central beauty of eternity is being beholden by John. The central beauty that defines all other beauty. I want to say it this way. You don't know, we only know what beauty is. We are only able to respond with weeping or awe or however our hearts respond to beauty. We are only able to do that because of what John saw. Because Jesus is not just beautiful, he is beauty. Without him, there's no way to know or experience beauty. Jesus is love. Without him, love is just a chemical reaction within your brain. There's no way to know love, to be loved, or to give love, unless behind all of the loving is the one who doesn't just love, doesn't just express love, but he is love. His very character, his existence means there's love. In the same way, the existence of this risen, exalted Jesus is so not only beautiful, but the very essence of beauty, in such a way that all beauty comes from him. All beauty is known because of him. All that is beautiful comes back to him. Precious stones, glorious, wonderful, valuable, yes, but they only have worth because Jesus is beautiful, altogether lovely, the fairest of 10,000, the Bible says. John saw that on the throne, the beauty of God. Secondly, encircling the throne. We will see encircling in the next proposition as well, but this is a vertical encircling. Rainbows, have you ever seen a rainbow do this way? I've only ever seen this. Have you ever seen these? I'm not saying they don't exist. God can do whatever he wants with a rainbow, but I've only ever seen that kind. And what happens every time we see one? We do, John's like, look, right? Look, rainbow. Stop the car. Okay, what do we have to do? Get our phone out and take a picture, right? Oh, look, two! There's two! And they meet. Oh, look, there's one that goes all the way around. Wait, look! Right? Rainbows are meant to be beautiful, but that's not all. God gets to say what rainbows are for. And God has said what they mean beyond beauty. We may make rainbows into good luck. You've heard of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, maybe? We even have people who take rainbows and use them for political purposes to prove their cause. But God gets to say what rainbows are for because he made them. And God says that rainbows represent his faithfulness. What John saw behind a beautiful Jesus sitting on the throne was a backdrop of faithfulness. And once again, every good Jew who read John's letter in the first century, John's revelation, thought of this from Genesis 9. God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life." God's faithful promise. On the throne, an indescribably beautiful God. As a backdrop to that beauty, encircling this glorious one, is the faithfulness, the faithful promise of our God. And he is faithful forever because the backdrop behind him is forever, because he is forever. And they go together. Lastly, John sees something around the throne. The word encircled and around are the same word in the original language, but there seems to be a vertical dimension to encircling behind the throne and a horizontal dimension this way around the throne. John sees something around the throne. What he sees is all of the work of God toward mankind throughout Revelation history. Let me tell you what I mean. The 24 thrones and elders, I'm not going to go into a long explanation. I would certainly like you to check this out for yourself. But what you'll find if you study and read is that 24 is a number representing two 12s. 12 is a big number in Scripture, a significant number. And in this case, John is seeing angels who are representing the two covenants of God, what we call the Old and the New Testaments, or the Old and the New Covenants of the Bible. God's work in Israel in the Old Testament, and God's work through the apostles and his church in the New Testament. The 12 tribes of Israel are the first 12. There are 12 thrones and elders representing God's work through Israel and in Israel to form them as a light to the nations. Proclaim, declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous deeds to all peoples. That's what Israel was made a nation for. God formed them into a nation, 12 tribes. Why? So that they could have a lot of power and influence? No, so that they would be a light to the nations. That's why God called them. And then 12 apostles. Jesus called 12 to himself, 12 of his disciples, and called them as apostles to send them. As the Father sent me, he said to them, I am sending you. Why? Same reason, as a light to the nations. He simply said, teaching them everything I've commanded you, and remember, I'm with you always to the end of the age. The 24 thrones and elders are angels representing the two covenants of God. 12 for the first covenant and 12 for the second covenant. 12 for the Old Testament, 12 for the New Testament. But all with the same purpose, God desiring a people for himself to declare his glory among the nations. In other words, John is seeing around the throne everything God ever intended to accomplish on earth, and all of it perfected in Jesus. They are around the throne because Jesus is the fulfillment of all of the Old Covenant, and Jesus is the goal of all of the New Covenant. All of this, all that surrounds him, all that bows down to him, allows him to be supreme, and God is saying, this is the reason for all of it. This is the fulfillment of all of it. This is what I was getting at through all of history, through all of the things that you don't understand in your life. This is the way to understand them. Jesus is the answer. He is the covenant fulfiller. He is the promise. He is the goal. It's all about him. If you look through the Old Testament, by the way, if you've never seen this series, I believe it's a 7-volume series called Christ in the Bible, and it begins in Genesis 1. Where can you find Christ? All throughout Scripture. It's a little easier in the New Testament, but it's fascinating as a study. Christ in the Bible. It's a very old series, about 150 years old. But from this book you'll see, as it goes through the Bible, Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. Jesus is that sacrificial lamb that was caught in the bushes when Abraham was about to kill his son. Jesus is the high priest in the temple wearing the ephod. He's the high priest above all high priests. Jesus is the bread of life. There was manna in the desert for the people, but Jesus was the bread that God wanted to give. Jesus is the light of the world. There's a light in the temple lit in the holy of holies, or in the holy place, I should say. That was just a symbol pointing to Jesus. Jesus is the pleasing incense before God. The priest would go in and light the incense and allow the aroma. But Jesus is that aroma. The incense only pointed to it. Jesus is the covering in Eden when Adam and Eve sinned and hid themselves with fig leaves, dung clothes. God killed an animal, and with the dead animal's hide covered his creation. That's pointing to Jesus. Jesus is the Ark of Noah that saved from the flood and the disaster. Jesus is the Ark of the Covenant containing the holiness of God. Jesus is the King of Israel, only symbolized by Saul and David and Solomon and Jeroboam and on and on and on. Jesus is the message of the gospel in the New Testament. Jesus is the power of the gospel. Jesus is the indwelling of the Spirit, the motivation for evangelism, the head of the church. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And that's what John was seeing. This glorious one, encircled by faithfulness and bowed down to by all of history as the answer to every incident in space and time. That's what John saw.